Some of these may seem logical, but we want to make sure you're aware of the best ways to combine your knowledge, to vary your practice, and come out sounding clear. Step 1 is immerse. Immersion is the easiest way to get an idea of how different people are speaking. What you're doing is completely surrounding yourself with the sounds and images of the language. The goal is to get a nice mix of everyone, young people and old, rich and poor, educated and not so much, just lots of different accents. What this does is it allows you to observe in the same way you did as a baby acquiring your first language, and this is not only limited to sounds. Of course, no one picks up on a second language as easily as a child does his first, but this is why we have to make an extra effort to follow these easy steps. The best way to think of this process is to compare yourself to an actor or an actress preparing for a big role, if you ever wanted to be in Hollywood. The closer your observation, the more intensely you can adopt everything from sound patterns to facial expressions, even hand gestures. All of these will help in the delivery of your Hebrew speech. Plus, you only need to do whatever is required for you to achieve what you want to achieve. We all have different goals. And you don't have to move to Israel to immerse yourself. In fact, you can very easily move to a foreign country or be in Israel and still speak your native language. It may take a little more effort to locate the proper resources, but it doesn't matter where you are in the world when you do this. Nowadays, you can bring Israel to you. You probably have just as many materials and just as much support using the internet and all its glory. You can use podcasts or YouTube to get native speakers talking at you in no time. Schedule time for it throughout the week. There is a downside to this first step, immersion. Think about someone learning to play basketball by constantly watching the NBA, learning how to sing by regularly attending concerts, or becoming a chef by always having the cooking channel on. All these examples give you a great opportunity to see and hear what others are doing, at the very least, and hopefully provide you with many new ideas to try that you've never thought of before. But unfortunately, while it's a wonderfully powerful tool, immersion will not necessarily work to perfect your pronunciation completely on its own. You may have to combine your efforts with these next 4 steps. Step 2 is indulge. In order for your pronunciation to sound natural, you need to embrace the new language. You need to embrace this Hebrew Israeli accent, even if that means sounding a little strange at first. Hebrew contains sounds that are foreign to our ears and also to our mouths. So being able to try out new things, pronouncing sounds like resh, chet, chaf, tet, without feeling like an idiot is important. I like to refer to this step as stepping out of one's comfort zone in order to grow as a speaker. The most gratifying feelings in life involve taking risks and exploring areas that are unfamiliar, and mastering pronunciation is no exception. The indulge step is most important for 2 particular groups. Number 1, students who hold on to their non-native accents because they're afraid of sounding funny or strange, or students who've studied with mostly non-native teachers and have kind of immersed in American or English accents. Maybe if you've gone to a Jewish day school and you had teachers who were native English speakers, you have this step is very important for you. The result of both of these groups is typically a standard foreign accent, whether it's American or otherwise. In order to properly give in to this new sound system, both of these groups need to first understand how their pronunciation sounds compared to that of a native speaker. And more importantly, have enough motivation and dedication to make the necessary adjustments. I often like to imitate Israeli accents in English to move a little closer to speaking Hebrew with that same accent. So I say, I'm Reuven from Israel, and right now I'm trying to practice every day, and it's not so easy to learn a new language, and so you have to have the right ability, travel and see the world, and you get the idea. Here are a few tips for effective imitation. Number 1, imitate people you actually want to sound like. Finding the right people to imitate is vital to the way you develop speaking ability. When we talked about immersion, I invited you to listen to everyone, all different kinds of people. But that was mainly to see and hear the differences to prepare you for this step right here. You're looking for people you admire as speakers, people with the abilities that you would like to show off, and anyone who you have access to on a consistent basis. A friend, a colleague, an actor, TV personality, any of those would work. Number 2, don't limit your imitation to sounds. We communicate with more than just our mouths, so when imitating others, focus on the way the language sounds and how it looks. Mouth shapes, facial expressions, even hand gestures. These are things that are key to sounding a lot closer to the real deal. Watching people who tend to be overly dramatic is a great idea. Number 3, take advantage of what you already know. So start small by making fun of accents in English. You can do a southern accent, or think of a different region of the country where they speak the same way, but it's in the same language. See if you can modify the accent just a little bit. Which sounds do they say differently? What do you hear when they speak? It may be only a few sounds that separate the accents. Get the idea? This doesn't only reinforce your listening skills, but it keeps your mind on the very few sounds that you're trying to improve. If you think about it consistently, with practice, you'll ultimately acquire the sounds, and it will become part of your identity instead of something that always gets in the way. Never will you be so rewarded for making fun of people. I guarantee you that. Step 3 is identify. You might be noticing a trend here. They all start with I. The identify step goes hand in hand with indulge, since you'll find it necessary to use the skills at the same time, or at least one right after the other. When we use the term identify, we're mainly talking about 2 specific areas. Each will help you clarify your plan and help give you clear direction as you move quickly toward your objective. You may also find that step 3, identify, is the most strategic of all the steps. So the first thing we're going to identify is your goals. Identify your goals. Some people feel that learning to master pronunciation means completely eradicating any sign of a foreign accent. Others aim to avoid mispronunciations and just be understandable, even if they still have, evidence of where they come from. Using these 5 steps can very well help you get to any level, but it's very important to ask yourself, what kind of speaker do I want to be? Identifying those goals. Next is identifying language patterns. Eventually, you'll come across words that contain sounds that you just don't have, you just can't pronounce. Similarly, you might find that you can't pronounce new words just by the spelling, right? Without nikud, or it's just a difficult word. Could be a couple different things. In this case, it's vital to decipher common sound patterns, spelling patterns within Hebrew. Often this takes a little extra effort, but in the end, it's worth it. Based on your experience and your research online, make a note of which sounds in general don't seem to appear in English. You'll likely find there are more than you think, and that similar spellings aren't exactly the same as your native language, even though Hebrew is a completely different alphabet. Don't let that discourage you. You're already very, very close. Step 4 is invite. Once you've done a little homework on your own, listened to a bunch of different accents, given yourself a chance to practice and try things out, and figured out what your goals truly are, it's time for some outside assistance. Hopefully by now you have an open mind about what it takes to master a skill as complex as pronunciation in a foreign language, and you're willing to accept advice from people who can guide you even further. What's helpful is to find a mentor that you trust, right? You've encountered many people throughout your language acquisition process. Friends, colleagues, classmates, and teachers have all played a role in your development as a speaker. But think about which one you would ask if you were ever in doubt. Maybe you haven't even met this person yet. The process can be as easy as asking your language teacher, a few questions, or as intense as taking a few weeks to focus on your pronunciation with a coach who can help you fill in the gaps once and for all. As long as, like we mentioned before, this is a person who you can relate to and trust as a speaker. Remember, it's not just someone to repeat a word a few times. Now you're looking for some legitimate insight and possible explanation. Invite your friends. By this point, you may even be able to put things together just by asking random native-speaking friends. After all, you do have the motivation to improve. If you're dedicated enough to have made it this far in the webinar, you're probably looking for ways to figure things out on your own if you know it will help. Be aware that even though you've asked a friend to correct your mistakes, they may not feel comfortable interrupting every single time. Ask for verification when appropriate, and allow some things to slide. Also, asking a series of different friends will help it all come together. Extra pro tip, have your friend use the word naturally in a short sentence, as well as, by itself in isolation, so you can hear the difference. Sometimes it changes when you put it in a sentence. Just a tip. And the last step here is implement. I saved the most important step for last, mostly because in order to effectively accomplish it, you should really have the proper mindset to prepare yourself for this personal practice. I initially named this step individual implementation because of the urgency to apply by yourself all the information that you've gathered, but the title wasn't consistent with the others, so just so you know, the focus here is to practice on your own. To reiterate the myth number 2 of pronunciation mastery, many people feel that they are getting all the practice they need because, after all, they spend countless hours talking to friends and colleagues and even strangers in Hebrew. This is not the practice I'm talking about. I just want to clarify that I agree with using conversation to practice pronunciation. However, at the beginning of this undertaking, it should be most utilized to strengthen the words and the sounds you've been working on alone or with your mentor. Unless the conversation is with the mentor whom you've asked to give you corrections and feedback. That's a different situation. Practicing alone or with a coach gives you time to concentrate on specific areas of your pronunciation. And it tells your brain that it's time to work and also time to retain this information. Repetition is key. You can practice anywhere. You can practice everywhere. The wonderful thing about pronunciation practice is that it can be done virtually anywhere. Unlike some other aspects of language learning, you don't need a book, a pen, or a computer. All you need is your voice. You can even practice while walking down the street, waiting in line, sitting in traffic, relaxing, in a park somewhere. It doesn't matter, anywhere. If you're worried about what people around you will think of you repeating Hebrew words over and over, or being embarrassed in general, just take out your cell phone and pretend to be talking to someone. No one else will notice, I promise. It only takes as long as you want it to. Think of it in the same way you do physical exercise. How would your physical health change if you went on a 10-minute jog every day? Or if you did 5 extra minutes of ab workouts before bed? 20 push-ups every morning before breakfast? I think you'd see some serious results within just a few weeks. I bet you'd feel better too. The only difference is that once you get your pronunciation down, that's it. There's no need to maintain or update your speech as long as you found the pronunciation style that suits you. Once your ear is tuned into this sound system, you can apply what you've learned to every new word you come across. This is your language identity. Muscle memory, baby! Every new successful conversation that you engage in thereafter is a small boost in your confidence. Everything is just going towards that confidence. Your attention to the details, clear pronunciation make you a talented speaker. You avoid all the misunderstandings. You're taken seriously like a native speaker. Now you can really show the world how well you speak Hebrew. So those are the 5 steps. Immerse, indulge, identify, invite, and implement. Just some last few tips to mention regarding these steps as we wrap up the presentation and get to some questions. The tips for success I can give you: number 1, be open and be willing to make mistakes. Learn from each of these mistakes. After studying for years, it's really hard for our egos to admit that we've been pronouncing a word incorrectly. It only takes one mistake with the proper mentor to never experience it again. Throughout this whole process, you'll learn a lot about yourself and in your style of learning. Knowing what kind of mistakes you make is key to your development. Again, let go of any inhibitions or fear of people judging you or fear of messing up. That's part of the process. You got this. Number 2, take advantage of opportunities to meet new people. The more people you meet in Hebrew, the more you experience new accents, you get a chance to show off your skills, allow yourself to make deeper connections and new contacts. You never know who may take note of your abilities and be able to help you in the future. Sometimes you meet people whose energy just makes you a great speaker. If for some reason you feel confident, words just come out right. Other times it's like you forgot everything you've ever learned. Spend more time with the confidence builders and see where that takes you. Last thing, don't focus on these 5 steps independently. Don't think of them as a chronological, order of steps necessarily, but rather 5 integrated actions to consider throughout the entire process. In other words, you don't need to complete step 1 to move on to step 2. The perfect combination of them all is what will bring you to the level of mastery. But be prepared, your life is about to change. So I want to thank each of you, people at home and those watching on the replay, for staying till the end. I hope this was valuable for you. I hope you take action and change the way that you are thinking about Hebrew pronunciation. There is a lot of information contained in this webinar, but I'm sure you took plenty of notes, or we'll go back and rewatch a couple times. Thank you to Yonatan for your support and participation.
Thanks a lot, Ruben. It was a pleasure to be here, and I highly encourage the participants to send us feedback and questions, and hopefully we'll be able to address all of them in our future webinars. Batzlacha!
Definitely. All right, guys, so please visit mivtaim.com, mivtaim, M-I-V-T-A-I-M, or visit Mivtaim on Facebook if you're not there already. Subscribe to the page, like the page, get some more updates and videos like this one, and let's show the world how well you speak this language. Let's take a few questions from the participants.